Good evening. You're watching TVP World News tonight. I'm Diana Skaya. Coming up, a political shakeup is taking place in Ukraine. Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba has resigned, along with the Deputy Prime Minister and several other ministers. President Zelensky has also dismissed his advisor. Now, more on that in just a moment, but first, let's look at tonight's headlines. Lviv, regarded as one of Ukraine's safest cities, was targeted in Russia's latest attack on the country. Belarusian dictator Alexander Lukashenko has pardoned another 30 people who were convicted for participating in protests. The Polish Prime Minister is visiting Moldova. Donald Tusk wants to support the Moldovan government's pro-European aspirations. Some of the highest-ranking Ukrainian officials have resigned, and more resignations are expected to follow ahead of the biggest cabinet reshuffle since the start of the war. Let's now move to Kyiv, where
at least 7 ministers and other high-ranking officials have submitted their resignations in the last 24 hours, and the presidential aide was fired. About a third of the positions in the cabinet are now vacant.
It doesn't mean, by the way, that the former people who were working on these positions, that they have doing bad work, that they have not delivered results.
President Zelensky commented on the reshuffle during a joint press conference with Taoiseach of Ireland Simon Harris earlier today.
We need new energy today, and these steps are related only to the strengthening of our state in different directions. International policy diplomacy is not an exception.
Ukraine's top diplomat Dmytro Kuleba submitted his resignation on Wednesday morning. After Zelensky, Kuleba was Ukraine's most recognizable face overseas, meeting leaders around the world to lobby for military and political support.
The Zelensky administration has been fantastic in its way of handling PR abroad and raising support, military, financial, moral, political for Ukraine. But it's been pretty disappointing at home in terms of communicating with the population, in terms of transparency, let's put it that way.
Zelensky's official term in office ended in May, but due to Ukraine being under martial law, presidential elections have been postponed.
Let's now move to Kyiv, where our correspondent Oz Chatterjee is coming to us live with the latest updates. Good evening, Oz. What more do we know about these resignations? Have there been any developments throughout the day so far?
Well, it's all changed behind me at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, where Dmytro Kuleba has resigned. His resignation has not yet been put before Parliament. That's expected to happen tomorrow. The Rada today had a break in it. They accepted the resignations of 4 of the 6 ministers that have resigned so far. They did not have enough to accept the resignations of the State Property Fund head and the Deputy Prime Minister for the reintegration of occupied territories. But the Minister of Justice, the Minister of Ecology, and the Minister of Strategic Industries, their resignations have been now accepted, and the Deputy Prime Minister in charge of in charge of European integration. So those positions have now been vacated. So in total now today, we have apparently 10 of the 21 positions in cabinet vacated tonight, going on into tomorrow. But we do expect those votes, particularly Kuleba's, the most important one, to be tendered before the Rada tomorrow. So the Speaker will get round to that tomorrow. Again, we will keep bringing you all of the updates as they happen, but we've only been able to get through 4 of those resignations yet, and none of the positions have been filled yet. We don't know who's going to be stepping in to replace them. But Zelensky did speak today, as you saw on your screens, and one of the things he said was that they were strengthening all the positions, and that included, he specifically highlighted international politics and diplomacy regarding the top diplomat. So no indication of reason why, other than saying new energy and strengthening. So hopefully more will be revealed in the coming days when we see who he's appointing to these new positions. Zelensky did stress in another statement today that September is going to be a very important month for Ukraine. He didn't really go into more details other than saying that the next few weeks are going to be very important. So this reshuffle is probably part of a critical part of Zelensky's thinking in that month, which concludes some pretty big diplomatic relations they're going to have with the United States over some hot button issues here, like striking targets inside Russia.
That's right, Oz, particularly since, just like you said, the U.S. Actually elections are are nearing. So we'll see how that develops. Thank you so much, our very own Oz Chatterjee from Kiev in Ukraine. Stay safe. Russian missiles have battered the city of Lviv, considered one of the safest cities in war-torn Ukraine. Now, at least 7 people were killed, including 3 children, showing that Russia's crimes against humanity have no boundaries.
At around 5 a.m. local time, the citizens of Lviv were woken up by air raid sirens. Their beloved city had become a target of Russian drones and hypersonic missiles. Parts of the city, which prides itself on its gorgeous architecture, had been reduced to a crumbling mess of rubble. Anna Gordievska, a journalist who works for the Nowy Kurier Galicyjski newspaper in Lviv, was on the scene of the attack shortly after it happened. She described the atmosphere as haunting.
It's terrifying when you stand there and look at the people who were affected. It's absolutely horrifying. Local media reports say that there is a man who lost his entire family. We don't know every detail as of yet.
While buildings aren't the only thing the residents of Lviv had lost, the Polish Prime Minister declared that Poland will help in any way they can to return Lviv to its former glory.
Lviv needs help. The Russians targeted the city center. They destroyed many old and antique apartment buildings. Poland is ready to help with their reconstruction.
The Polish Foreign Ministry has also condemned the attack. The attack on Lviv was part of a larger wave of Russian missile strikes on Ukrainian cities. Poltava, located further to the east, saw at least 53 deaths as a result of an attack on Tuesday this week. With Russian missiles reaching the western part of the country, one thing is clear. Nothing or no one in Ukraine is safe from Russia's savagery, and no target is off limits to the eastern invaders.
The mounting international pressure on Belarusian dictator Alexander Lukashenko seems to be bringing about tangible results. Now, Belarusian state media have confirmed that 30 more political prisoners incarcerated for their participation in democratic demonstrations have been pardoned by the country's head of state.
Lukashenko's crackdown on democratic opposition, which intensified in 2020 after the rigged presidential elections, has been met with international criticism, which many consider a reason for the pardons.
I think that is not good position when some European countries want to negotiation with Lukashenko. All negotiations must be only after release all political prisoners.
Following the release of 18 prisoners in early July and an additional 30 in mid-August, the latest batch included 23 men and 7 women. No details were provided concerning their identities.
Probably no one knows who exactly was released. The condition for the release is complete silence and ban of communication with the press. Additionally, those released are prohibited from leaving Belarus.
Local human rights organizations estimate that Belarusian prisons hold at least 1,400 political prisoners. According to the Belarus-based Vyasna Human Rights Center, the number of prosecutions in the country is actually rising, not falling, with at least 170 people having been convicted of politically related crimes in July alone.
Lithuanian President Gitanas Nausėda has begun a 2-day state visit to Poland. Now, this is his first trip to the country since his re-election. Our reporter Katarzyna Nowicka is following the visit and has this report.
The president of Lithuania, Gitanas Nausėda, is on a special 2-day visit in Poland, kick-started in Warsaw, the Polish capital, for a meeting with the Polish president Andrzej Duda. Ahead of his visit, the advisor to the head of state of Lithuania shared that the main topic of their talks over these 2 days will be defense cooperation and strategic cooperation as well, especially on the topic of the Suwałki Gap. as the Russian war in Ukraine continues. The leaders of the two countries are also set to participate in a special bilateral defense industry forum in Warsaw, where over 70 defense companies from Lithuania and Poland are set to attend. Back in April, Nausėda announced that Vilnius would like to establish a regional logistics center with Warsaw for HIMARS missile launcher ammunition. So this topic is also going to be very high on the agenda in his visit to Poland. The presidents will also jointly participate in commemorative events for the 455th anniversary of the Union of Lublin. For TVP World from Warsaw, Katarzyna Nowicka.
In a bid to foster friendly relations with potential EU members, Poland's Prime Minister Donald Tusk has traveled to Moldova. There, he took part in a series of high-level meetings with Moldovan officials, including Prime Minister Dorin Recen.
Donald Tusk was welcomed by his Moldovan counterpart, officially starting the Polish PM's state visit to the country. The main objective of his meetings is promoting cooperation, not only between Warsaw and Chisinau, but also between Moldova and the EU.
I reassured Prime Minister Recen, and I would like to also reassure all Moldavians that Poland will work tirelessly according to a thought-out plan in cooperation with the Moldavian government to make sure that the EU accession process proceeds smoothly.
These comments come ahead of the Polish takeover of the presidency of the Council of the European Union, scheduled for the first half of 2025.
A lot of Western officials have been traveling to Moldova lately, which shows the West's support for our goal, which is joining the European Union.
Warsaw is expected to pay greater attention to the process of EU enlargement, as the current holders of the presidency, Hungary, seem uninterested in expanding the bloc. He also stressed that the stability in the region, which is currently disrupted by the ongoing Russian invasion of Ukraine, is mandatory for closer cooperation between Poland, Moldova and the EU.
Poland is increasing its visibility in Southeast Asia. The Polish foreign minister has wrapped up day one of his final stop in Manila today. Now, after traveling to Singapore and Malaysia, Radosław Sikorski had more top-level meetings in the Philippines capital today in a bid to boost Polish business and strengthen relations. Our very own correspondent Don Arleth was there and has the details in this next report.
Today, Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski kicked off his visit to the capital of the Philippines. Now here in Manila, he met with his counterpart, the Foreign Minister of the Philippines, as well as the President and the Minister of Defense. Now, it's been 50 years since Poland and the Philippines enjoyed diplomatic relations, and it's been 30 years since a Polish foreign minister has visited the country. Now, on this Asian tour that Foreign Minister Sikorski has embarked upon, he's really made it a point to raise European concerns about the security situation on our continent. But here in the Philippines, they're facing a little bit different foe, if you will, and that is in the form of China and its expansionist policies in the South China Sea. Now, Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski did draw a parallel between the conflict in Ukraine and China's revisionist policies in the South China Sea. The Philippines Navy is constantly being harassed as there are certain parts of the South China Sea which are contested now by China.
Well, it looks like both of our regions have a problem with powerful countries, members of the UN Security Council, turning to revisionism, to changing borders. And we think that the arbitrations under UNCLOS should be followed, should be honored, and therefore Philippines has our solidarity on this matter.
Tomorrow, Foreign Minister Sikorski will wrap up his tour of Southeast Asia after visiting Singapore, Malaysia, and finally the Philippines. Overall, it looks like a very successful visit here to Southeast Asia and potentially fruitful in terms of potential cooperation, which will continue to develop. Don Arleth reporting from Manila, TVP World.
New contracts worth hundreds of millions of euros were signed today in Kielce, Poland. Now, the International Defense Industry Exhibition, which is underway in the city, showcases the scale of modernization the Polish armed forces are currently undergoing.
One of the contracts signed today in Kielce covers 15 airfield control radars. Another one, signed with a Polish company, provides more reconnaissance drones for Poland. Manufacturing armaments in Poland allows the government to minimize costs, as the funds spent in the country remain in the economy. Elements of foreign equipment can also be produced in Poland. This is true, for instance, with the Patriot missile defense system. While major contracts always make headlines, deals concerning the equipment of individual soldiers are often overlooked. Poland has recently purchased handheld rocket launchers from Sweden's Saab.
The latest version of the Carl Gustaf is called the Carl Gustaf M4, so the Model 4. It's a model year 24. It's reloadable. It has different kind of ammunition. You have ammunition for anti-tank purposes. You have anti-personnel, you have anti-structure, and you also have some support ammunition like smoke and flares. It lights up the area.
The Kielce Defense Industry Exhibition is the perfect opportunity for countries to buy also smaller equipment, such as handheld rocket launchers or drones. Delegations from numerous countries come to Kielce to search for this kind of equipment. Marek Steele, TVP World.
Another attempt to cross the English Channel has taken place on the French side only a day after a tragedy took the lives of 12 migrants, including a pregnant woman and children. Now, this event has only sparked further discussion about responsibility and international cooperation to stop similar tragedies from happening, and this days after British Prime Minister Keir Starmer returned from France. Our Claudia Czerwinska has the report.
Wednesday morning saw a group of migrants try to cross the channel just a day after an unsuccessful attempt. Saw a group of 12 migrants, mainly from Eritrea, die after a small boat capsized. French Coast Guard and police were present on site, trying to save migrants from sharing a similar fate to that of those who came before them. Even though tackling the issue of illegal migration is on top of the list of priorities for both the French and the British governments, more than 2,000 people have arrived in the UK on small boats over the past 7 days. Unsurprisingly, another loss of life sparked an outrage among local French officials and residents, blaming the UK for the tragedies taking place in the Channel. Meanwhile, British authorities are putting the blame on people smugglers who are becoming increasingly persistent and aggressive in their efforts. After the tragedy, which took place on Tuesday, French Interior Minister Gérald Darmanin emphasized the need to re-establish French-British cooperation in the field of illegal migration.
It is important to re-establish a traditional migratory relationship with our friends and neighbours, Great Britain. Otherwise, we'll obviously not stop. Despite all the efforts made by their police and gendarmes, these difficulties affecting the north of France.
Last week, French President Emmanuel Macron and British Prime Minister Keir Starmer pledged to work closely together to dismantle migrant smuggling routes. Considering yet another tragedy, the efforts to successfully find a plan of action between the UK and France could be the only way forward to prevent further tragedies from happening. From London for TVP World, I'm Claudia Czerwinska.
Students in the majority of European countries are up for a surprise. Now, bans on phones in schools are being further introduced across the continent. And this semester, some school children will start their education with their mobile devices stashed away.
A digital pause kicked off this school year in France for students ages 15 and above. This experiment, which is being carried out in around 200 schools across the country, is meant to determine whether limited access to phones improves children's educational progress.
During class, we're not going to be on the phone and we need to concentrate.
Another goal is to protect children from harmful content and limit their overall screen time.
We have to think about the time, for example, how much time we can spend on the internet every day. We have to think about technical and safety issues.
A similar measure has also been introduced in Hungary, Denmark, the Netherlands and Bulgaria, among others. More countries are also considering such moves, but not Poland. A consensus needs to be worked out first.
When I spoke about it recently, I said that I was in favor of democracy at school. basically to sit down with parents, teachers and children themselves and establish rules for using mobile phones.
Some experts say that education should come before prohibition.
So we really have a lot of work to do in terms of educating all of us how to use the internet and digital devices wisely.
Whatever the approach, phones do pose challenges for children and teenagers. According to one survey, more than 60% of Polish teenagers use them for longer than 9 hours every day.
And now, back to our main topic this evening, the latest political shakeup in Ukraine's cabinet. Now, Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba has resigned, along with Ukraine's Deputy Prime Minister, the Justice Minister, and the Environment Protection Minister. Now, joining us now to discuss in more detail about this cabinet restructure is Poland's former ambassador to Ukraine, Bartosz Cichocki. Bartosz, thank you so much for being with us this evening.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. Very kind of you.
Bartosz, now, Ukrainian President Zelensky's decision to reshuffle the cabinet seems quite sudden to many. Now, his reasoning, of course, behind his decision, as he said, is to give Ukraine's leadership new strength. But why now at such a critical time? What exactly is he trying to say behind the lines here? What do you think that President Zelensky is actually hoping to achieve with this reshuffling of the cabinet?
I'm afraid I will disappoint you. I am among many confused by this reshuffle. All we can say for sure is that this is not actually a surprise. Originally the reshuffle was set to take place late June. But Ukraine has quite complicated procedure for those cases. The parliament has to first accept the dismissals, then accept the new nominations. And then back in June, there was no enough deputies present in the parliament. So we expected the reshuffle, but still, when I talk to my colleagues, my friends in Kyiv, nobody actually gives me a confidence of understanding why exactly, why now, why those ministers. First of all, it's too early to judge since, for example, there was not enough votes to accept dismissals of, for example, Deputy Prime Minister Stefanishyna, European integration, or Deputy Prime Minister Iryna Vereshchuk, in temporary occupied territories. So this would probably come back, those dismissals would come back to the parliament. In some cases, most commentators agree that the dismissed ministers, senior officials, would be actually upgraded. So we have to wait and see. In case of Deputy Prime Minister Stefanishyna, the talk of the town is that she would lead a bigger ministry of both European integration and justice. In case of Ms. Vereshchuk, the speculation goes that she would get a senior job in the president's administration. A week ago, I would tell you that for sure, we will have a new prime minister of Ukraine. But suddenly, and this is actually one of the big surprises, now it seems that Denis Shmyhal will keep his job. So there is confusion. I would say, from my comfortable distance in Warsaw, this is the last thing. The confusion is the last thing Ukraine needs in a very delicate, very difficult situation with Russia's offensive toward Pokrovsk in the east and Ukraine's operation in the Kursk region. But, well, I'm not in Kyiv, I'm not at those meetings President Zelensky is chairing now, so I don't know the whole details, all the details. Obviously, this is his very much personal process, and he reconfirms that he's the leader, he's taking full responsibility, he's not hesitating to take full responsibility for the political scene landscape of this country.
You know, Bartosz, you said, I mean, you're not there right now, but I mean, you were the ambassador. You spent a few years in Ukraine. You were also there, correct me if I'm wrong, you were there when the war started, right? Now, I want to talk about a question to you about impact. Now, we know that Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba, who's been a key figure, right, in Ukraine's diplomacy throughout the war with Russia since the beginning. Now, he decided to also hand in his resignation. As you said, it's not yet accepted either. But now, what impact could Kuleba's resignation, along with the other ministers, if you can say, what impact could this actually have on Ukraine's international relations, particularly on its foreign policy with the West? What can you tell us about that?
Well, first of all, with all due respect to Dmytro Kuleba, whom I have honor to know, his resignation was long expected. He's set to become ambassador in one of the G7 countries. He asked for it. This change is not a result of criticism or President Zelensky's disappointment. It was agreed. Most probably, a very experienced diplomat, Andriy Sybiha, currently deputy foreign minister, will substitute Kuleba. I believe this will bring rather continuity than discontinuity. We need to understand that despite the fact that Ukraine is formally a cabinet parliamentary republic, the presidential center is dominant, and particularly in foreign and security policy, major decisions, strategic directions are agreed, are decided in presidential administration. So I'm quite confident that we will not see some strategic changes in foreign and security policy of Ukraine.
Bartosz, what about here the situation? Let's look at Poland and Ukraine relations here. Now, do you think that this cabinet reshuffling, and how do you think that this could potentially influence the relationship with Poland? Do you think that this could lead to actually a recalibration of how Ukraine is going to engage with its neighbors, not just Poland, but I mean particularly this strong relationship, this interesting relationship between Poland and Ukraine?
Very good question, but difficult to answer. There are many ifs. First of all, if Andriy Sybiha will become next minister, it's a good news for Poland and Polish-Ukrainian relationship. Andriy Sybiha worked as a diplomat in Warsaw quite long time. He speaks Polish. He knows Poland very well. Before he was moved to the position of deputy foreign minister, he was deputy to the head of the presidential administration, and he was responsible within this inner circle of President Zelensky exactly for the Polish-Ukrainian relations in the critical moment immediately after the aggression. He knows Poland very well. Very important person for the Polish-Ukrainian relationship is Irina Vereshchuk, I mentioned before. She co-chaired the Economic Cooperation Committee of Poland and Ukraine. If she will be moved up to the presidential administration, again, it's a good news for the Polish-Ukrainian relationship. But then, ultimately, bilateral relations depend on both sides. So it is critical that the Polish side reinvests ambitiously in bilateral relationship. Unfortunately, after those protests of the farmers, of the cargo vehicle drivers, after some unfortunate statements recently, for example, by Minister Kuleba, there was some sense of, I would say, even frustration and hesitance on both sides by senior politicians to initiate something constructive. We need recalibration, as you said, and I believe this reshuffle would be helpful.
And interesting to see how that will definitely play out for both countries. Thank you so much, Bartosz Cichocki, former ambassador of Poland to Ukraine. That's all for this edition of World News Tonight for TVP World. I'm Diana Skye. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.